My name is Mike Judd. I drive a yellow cab. I also own and drive a wheelchair cab. I'm a member of the Western Washington Taxicab Owners Association. One of the things that I see that has been occurring with the for-hire vehicles is that a whole separate industry parallel to the cab industry is being created by, from what I can only understand, is a series of mistakes by the Department of Consumer Affairs. But what is occurring on the street is that the for-hire vehicles are basically operating on a business model that is based upon illegal activities. Those illegal activities are picking up flags on the street, which are reserved for taxicabs, and operating as on-demand vehicles even when they receive calls. And they're specifically regulated to do prearranged fares, which they primarily are operating as on-demand and flag vehicles. And so I think that the regulations that are, I think that the proposals that have been made to require the for-hire vehicles to quit looking like taxicabs and be all white needs to be instituted right away, and enforcement needs to be increased on the illegal activities of the for-hire vehicles. They're going to say that they're trying to make a living and this kind of thing, but their business model is infringing heavily upon taxicabs and preventing me from operating in a lawful manner. Thanks.
Chris Van Dyke will be followed by Abadir Abdallah, followed by Jagjit Singh. Yeah, and if you can tell us also if you happen to be representing an organization or
Yes.
That's great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Chris Van Dyke, speaking on behalf of 1,400 taxicab owners, operators, and other workers affiliated with Yellow Cab. Thank you. Under state law and local regulation, the City of Seattle, limousines and for-hire vehicles are not allowed to solicit passengers on the street. Those trips must be prearranged. The street authority is what makes a taxicab a taxicab. The public trusts the city to more closely regulate taxicabs to ensure that taxicabs picking up street hails are safe, operator background checks, that we have insurance, that we are legal, that we are inspected. In city after city across America right now, there has been a flood of unregulated, unmarked limousines and for-hire vehicles that are painted to look like taxicabs, operating illegally. People are being cheated on fares, passengers have been robbed, women have been raped. The public is not safe. But it does not have to be this way. We are going to ask that you not pander to those who simply ignore the law, that you not cater to those for-hire vehicle and limousine operators and taxicab operators who put their own financial interests before public safety. This is a public safety issue. Just last year, for example, it doesn't have to be this way, just last year, 35 taxicab operators failed to sign a lease document properly, and they were fined $1,000 apiece by this city, and the mayor refused to review it, refused to overturn it. $1,000 because they signed a piece of paper wrong. You can enforce the law if you want to. Nobody needs hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on a year-long study on the taxicab for-hire limo industry.
2 minutes, Chris.
The only thing we need you to do is enforce the laws that exist. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now that the City of Seattle Council members are informed about the illegal activity of the for-hire vehicles, members and their legal team and Department of Consumer Affairs are going to talk about the how to enforce the law.
Well, for-hire vehicles can only do prearranged trips in the city of Seattle, and they have to charge flat rates, and they can't use the word taxi or top lights.
So I was picked up in the surveys is that there is some confusion there, and I think for me personally, it's from a distance, it's hard visually to tell the difference between a for-hire vehicle and a cab, the way they are currently decorated, if you will. The thing that can happen in the confusion is someone gets into a vehicle that they think is a cab, and are used to paying on a metered basis, and then discover that they're in a flat rate situation. And the prohibition on hailing, to avoid the confusion issue, and again, this point potentially of discussion, limit vehicle colors and the advertising. It's a sense that it's both those things. And when I say advertising, what I have in mind, and I should have been more clear, arguably, is the light on top of many of the for-hire vehicles can easily be, from a distance, can be seen as a taxi light, something expect to see on top of a taxi vehicle. Increased penalties and enforcement for illegal hailing. The issue of illegal hails, picking up rides, people are waving down the for-hires has been an issue. There's been a lot of interest in more enforcement. I would argue that there's something to be said for increasing the penalties as well, in the sense that enforcement is expensive, and if you wanted to create a deterrent, one way to do it is to put lots of people out there to enforce. Another is to raise the stakes for getting caught, and a little bit of both might be just the right recipe. So that's what's motivated there.
So, and right now, it's what is it? What's it?
I believe the first offense is $70, and then it escalates, but there's a cap on it. I don't recall if it's 150 or.
Do you have a sense how many of those we've issued in the last 6 months?
Not exactly the number, but there's been a number.
Hundreds?
Oh, probably hundreds, yeah.
Okay.
And then, consistent with that, for the for-hire vehicles, increase the fees to support enforcement. You still want to limit the confusion between taxis and for-hire vehicles. And again, I think you need to think about that broadly, because right now there's no confusion about what a lift vehicle is. They're very notable. And sidecar people less know, but nonetheless, they have their own distinctive markings. But there's nothing inherently that would preclude somebody entering that space and putting on a set of decorations that look a lot like a taxi and purposely trying to confuse that as well. So I think there really would be a reason going forward to purposely limit that confusion. Again, we would want to enforce against this existing restriction on hailing. The hailing market is really the bread and butter of the taxi service. If we allowing, as it is now, we know there's some violation of that by for-hire vehicles.
Fast forward 2014, the owners of for-hire vehicles gave 101 taxi cab and for-hire training to the City of Seattle Council members. Here is one of the teachers.
At the beginning, Sally started with we wanted 101 taxi and for-hire. I think those of us who were involved throughout the process have educated the council, showed them every angle of it. I'll ask the members who joined us to also look back at the history of what have happened.
After education, the city council say give the for-hire what they want, a de facto taxi cab.
Council bill that is before you today, there is a provision that would allow for-hire two-tone taxis, or cabs, sorry, two-tone vehicles to pick up limited street hails. The limitation would be that they could not access taxi zones or hotel designated zones, but otherwise they would be allowed to pick up street hails.
We decided that it made practical sense for consumers to go ahead and allow flat rate two-tone vehicles to pick up street hails, but during this kind of 2-year phase that we're doing, to not allow those vehicles to queue up at taxi stands. We'll see how that goes, and maybe we do want to open that up further after we've seen how it works for consumers.